Hello and welcome back to DriveDriverDriven. I'm Humble and we're back on the Blunicorn project. I wanted to give you guys kind of a quick update of the progress so far, and I've got Kuyper over here helping again. We're back kind of double teaming on wiring and the body, getting progress in both of these parts at the same time so that things can come together quickly right at the end. So let me show you the progress he's made so far, and then I'll show you the progress that I've made so far. So here's Kuyper pulling the tape off. He went through and did the tape and paint for the center tub yesterday. So you can see we've got this nice base coat in so that this is ready for sound deadening next, and then we'll come in and detail all this extra trim on the edges. Here's the progress for the nose, and it's all ready to go for undercoat in the wheel well area. Ditto for the rear clamshell. Still needs to have the little bits and edges detailed, but we're ready for undercoat here, and then for our heat shielding all through the middle area where the engine and the exhaust sit. Let's go ahead and start at the back here. I've got our rain light / fog light mounted. Just a quick and easy little bracket that holds that in place. That'll tie in with our rear Ultima wiring, which I have changed the harness plug for. And now everything goes through a single Deutsch connector. Moving down, this hasn't been coated yet, but these are our new leads for a transmission cooler fan, and then one for our transmission cooler pump, which will be back in this area. Coming forward to where the tank usually sits, we have our lines for our fuel sender, our fuel pump, our oil cooler fan, and something I'm integrating on this side now as well is, instead of using the Ultima clamshell warning system, which is basically just lights, I'm tying it into our PDM so I can trigger other alarms now, and that'll give me basically better opportunities or to make things clear or even prevent the car from starting. Side markers done. Our Raptor buttons are done. This is our inputs for our speed or e-pass unit. We have our CAN buttons now in place, and I left this with kind of a long lead because I wasn't sure if I wanted these over here on the side or up on either side of the steering wheel. So I left options for this. The motor itself is ready to go. I have the Hvac plate in place. I still need to make this a little bit prettier on the other side of the panel, and I think I'm just going to glue in a dead vent on the other side for aesthetics, and then have our tubing and whatnot come across for our dash vents, and then have our single under dash vent on the bottom. The wiper's hooked up and ready to go. We have all of our, high speed, low speed, ground, and our park sense. I think I've got that configured correctly. We're going to find out here shortly. Our aim dash is hooked up. That's all ready to go. I haven't run the Motorsport sensor loom yet, but I still need to get the dash configured anyway. And then I have our lower dash USB and basically cigarette port adapter lights, or 12-volt adapters. There's a set of these on each side of the car for driver and passenger. We have our power lead run. This is the Pdm 30, which is mounted nice and low here down in the side pod area. And our leads run, I still need to finish our leads for the front. And these are our 150 amp relays for our big ticket power items. Our fan leads are run up front. Our lights are run. This is, again, I've switched out the Ultima plug for a single Deutsch plug, and that'll power all the lights. This is the assembly that actually sits behind the kind of light up eyebrow and the sequential lights, and we'll get to see more of those in a little bit too. Back over here, this is the adapter for our fuel sender into the AIM. And we have our sender wire run. It's not quite hooked up to the dash there yet. More of those cigarette lighter and USB ports here. Underneath, we have lines for our AC switch. And the way I've got this configured is our fan has 3 speeds, high, medium, and low. We have an AC triggers that triggers off of ground, so that if our ground circuit here is completed, then it'll turn on the AC system as a whole, as long as we have not too much and not too little pressure in the line. And then each of those 3 speeds will enable high, medium, and low on our AC pump, so that it can run at 3 different speeds. Generally speaking, you don't need a high-speed fan and high-speed pump in the Ultima. 2 reasons is A, you have a small cabin, but B, you can freeze the evaporator up here under the dash, which was a problem before, and that's just due to, again, very large system in a very small space. But back to here, these are our power and ground leads for the compressor itself. And then we have our control wires down here. Moving on down, we have another Deutsche connector. This is for our leads that will eventually plug into the ECU. And then our leads for starter and our fuel pump on the passenger side. That leads us to preparing our Raptor switches. So I've shown this comparison before, and let me pull these out and I'll show this again side by side now that everything's taken apart. All right, so again, these are the old Raptor switch buttons. I have the unit pulled off of the steering wheel, but something that I wanted to point out previously, that it's just a minor touch, but it makes a large difference, is on the edge of the PCB here, I've touched it up with a paint pen. So you have a black PCB with the nice Raptor and Summit logos and our Ultima horn button on the front, but there's no exposed like composite edge anymore. It's been nice and blacked out, and it's a minor detail, but once you've seen it like this with it all blacked out, it's hard to go back to something like this with the clear edge. And so these are the new buttons now with the nice magnetic cap, and again, same silkscreen logo, same black PCB, but what I need to do is actually paint this edge, and I was going to show you just how to do that really quick. So there's really not a whole lot to it. This is just a Krylon black paint pen. It's nothing special. I just picked it up at a hardware store. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a pen that has black paint in it. And this is all you have to do, is just paint the edge. Now, as far as our steering wheel buttons go, this is just a simple cosmetic mod. Doesn't change anything, but you can see the difference right away. So now we have our edges all painted up, and it really does make a significant difference, at least to my eyes, than it does with the exposed composite edges. It just looks like a more finished piece to me, and is such a simple little detail, a simple little trick, just hitting it with a paint pen, and it makes all of the little difference. Because like once you see that edge, you can't unsee it. And now it just blends in with the PCB. And that's just something I wanted to share. Just a little detail, it's easy to do, but it makes a big difference, at least to my eyes. All right, fast forward a little bit more, and well, it's a new day, a new week, and I've spent about a week on the wiring and configuration of our Motec PDM. Like, no joke, that's how long it's taken to really wrap my head around this. And now I can show you what it does and sort of how I've got it configured. Let me show you the progress so far. Got our configuration up on the laptop here. Got our CAN pad ready to go. The way I have this sort of configured is a little bit by mistake, but when I first turn the key on, it closes the relays here, which provide power to everything in the car. Right now our starter's disconnected because there's no reason for it to be connected, but the starter will go straight to the battery, but everything else in the car goes through these relays. So as soon as we turn our master switch on, so this is basically the car in ready state or a standby state. So in standby mode, I have it sort of blinking our power button just to let you know that that's the state it's in. Everything is off, but our CAN pad has power, which is important because that tells the rest of the system what to do via button press. Our steering wheel buttons here on the Raptor, those have power. Our power steering has power, and our dash has power. The power steering wasn't supposed to have power. I forgot which. I got overzealous when I was wiring, and I wired that in with our sort of primary information systems. And it's too late to change it now because I've used every single output. I'm not really upset by that, but it's just the power steering is activated with the other sort of mission critical systems. I guess that's sort of helpful if you need to pull the car off somewhere with it in standby mode. So from standby mode, if we hit our power button once, so now the system is on and it is providing power to our air quote ignition, or our primary 12 volt power source to everything in the car, and our under dash power outlets. If I press the button again, now we have power to our lights and all the other systems in the car except for the ECU. If I do this again, we can watch our light animation. Now, when the whole system is in the car and it's behind like a diffuser plate or whatever, it looks a lot better. You don't really see the individual LEDs so much like that. If we do the same for the back, they also get a startup animation. It's much longer for the tail lights, but then they come on, and these are effectively our DLR, DRL running lights. So these are our just daytime running lights. This is, besides a design improvement, these lights are actually an improvement over the previous Ultima lights in that you can see these quite a bit better in the daytime. With the old lights and the chrome surrounds, they were difficult to see in the daytime, and I've got a button rigged up for our brake lights, and you can see they're much brighter than previous, and I really like that design. So from here, this is basically everything in a running state except for the ECU. So now if I hit the button a third time, so now the ECU has power and the whole car is now in a run state. So if I hit the start, well, if the starter was connected and the ECU was programmed, we could start the car from this state. Going back to just our sort of non-run mode, our accessory mode, if you will. One thing that's nice about our software is if I go in our online mode and I check for our PDM information, so these are our input pins, these are our output pins, these are our conditions or functions that I've written. And then here's some kind of basic PDM status for like power, current, temperature, etc. And then different CAN messages that I haven't configured yet. It also gives you our button status. So these are for the keypad, which operates via CAN, versus these input pins, which some of them are from our steering wheel buttons as inputs, and then some of these will go to the ECU to trigger other systems. So like trans cooler fan, fuel pump, our actual radiator fans, etc. All those will be triggered via input pins from the ECU. When a channel is active, it shows up green like this. So if I just quickly press our high beam button, this is like a flash to pass when the lights are off. And you can see the status light turn green when it's in use. And then over in this area, you can see sort of the average power used and the immediate power used by that channel. So going back to our CAN pad now, the second button here I've configured for lights. So again, a single press will turn on our parking lights or idle lights, whatever you want to call them. Same for the rears. You can see our parking lights on in the back. Another button press. Orange means that my headlights are on, and then the red light means that my high beams are on. So if I hit our high beam light, I can toggle between our high and low beams. It's kind of hard to tell with the lights on in here. And then likewise, if I turn the lights off and I go through our high beams, I can toggle it here and I get our flash to pass function on the headlights. The next button over, we have our fog light. And if I go to the back of the car, it's a FIA rain light, which is very bright. I plan to set this up both as a fog light, but also as a emergency brake light. So when it sees a brake pressure of greater than 900 PSI or 800 PSI in the lines, which I can do because I have brake sensor inputs, I can have it flash the rain light just for extra information for anyone behind me. And then this is, I haven't pinned it yet, but this is for our reverse switch. And if I just ground it, we have our reverse lights come on. And now we come up to one of the first sort of party tricks. Doesn't seem like much, but it's kind of a pain in the ass to configure, or to get right anyway. So the last button on the top row, button number 4, is for my wipers. So if I push once, the wipers are in intermittent mode. So it cycles once, parks, and then it waits for 3 seconds, lather, rinse, and repeat. It also lights up the first light. If I go again, now we're in basically slow, wiper slow, and it'll just run continuous. One more time. Now the wipers are in high or fast mode. And if I push the button one more time, it cycles until it reaches the park state, and then the wipers park, and we're done. Now, the party trick is getting all that to work with two buttons, which you have to set up a function for. So if I hit our wiper button on the steering wheel, same thing, I can cycle through the different modes. I still get our output on the button to show our status. And we're done. By the way, this is the button pad on the steering wheel from Summit, the Raptor GP, the one I just colored in not too long ago. You can see that looks very, very nice. And because it's wireless, I can test all the operations walking around with the wheel, well, wirelessly. Down here we have our defrost. So I still have to work out the logic on that. If I press it, it's running our sort of defrost program now, but another press or press and hold should cancel, but that function isn't working, and I need to rewrite how that is set up. Again, some of the challenges of trying to get a function to do what you want it to do. And then I have two blank buttons right now. This one is just set to our brake light, so I can test our brakes because, well, the system is empty right now. This one's not doing anything. I just have it light up the pad light when I push the button. Not sure what I'll use this for just yet, but I do have, the ability to add operations later on down the road if I want. And then lastly, this last button is our starter button. And again, I just have it lighting up all the lights when I push it, but in the end, that'll run the starter as a momentary. On the steering wheel in our Raptor GP, so all these buttons are also configured as inputs. They're set up as input channels. Again, these are just stickers. You can have them do any 8 functions that you want. I stuck with the Ultima functions. So right now the horn doesn't work because I forgot to ground it, but if I push that, it's set up as a momentary, and that would honk the horn typically. If I hit our turn signal once, it turns our turn signal on. And if you notice, our side light blinks at a certain frequency. I think I have it set to half second on, half second off. The lights take a little bit to sync and catch up, but once they do, it'll follow the same sync pattern. So they'll come on as a part of that same half second on, half second off, but do it in time. And then likewise for the rear, they're also sequential. They take a little bit of time to sync, but once they do, they follow the same pattern. So if I push the button again, it'll cancel and everything will go back to normal. If I do one push and then hit it again, that's it. It just cancels immediately. So we have our right turn signal as well. If we look over there, we can see those going. And again, another button press will cancel. And then we're back to our running lights. If I have our left turn signal going and I press our hazard button, our hazard buttons are now going. And if I hit our left turn signal button, nothing happens. Right turn signal button, nothing happens. Those won't override hazards. But if I hit the hazard button again, now everything goes back. That's sort of how our flashers work. I don't have a flasher indicator on the pad yet. I think that's something I'm going to change. I'll probably have the green LED on the lights light up when the blinkers are flashing, just so I know that they are. I decided not to use the Raptor indicators because I could mimic those same functions using the button pad and keep the button pad in a place where it's also easy to see. I have our wash button. So the wash button not only runs our washer bottle, but it also does an intermittent wipe function. So it'll spray and then wipe while you're holding down the button, and then the wiper again goes back to park. Lastly, this function on the steering wheel is a fan override. Previously, the way the Ultima was set up is you would push this and all the fans would run at the same time. So your radiator fan, your oil fan, everything would just come on, and it's sort of like a panic button for overheat. And I wanted to have a little bit more adjustability than that. So one button press will turn on one fan. Second button press turns on the next. Third button press will turn on the oil cooler fan. And the fourth button press turns on the trans cooler pump and the trans cooler fans. And then one more button press turns all the fans back off so that they're powered by their individual systems. The reason that's sort of a good thing to have is if you're going to be coming off the track and you have a cool down lap, you can just mash that fan override button, and if your fans aren't going yet already, you can help cool the car off more quickly by just jamming a fan override and rolling into the pits. You could also use the fan override with the car off, although it'll drain the battery a little bit. So that's sort of how I've got the PDM configured in a nutshell. I can go a little bit more in depth in terms of setting up channels with an input, your functions, and an output if people are interested. I won't lie, it's daunting at first glance. There's a lot to it, and it has a steep learning curve. But once you understand sort of the basics and how you need to configure the system, it's a lot less daunting and just more tedious in getting things configured and working the way you want them to. And as you can see, even I haven't quite attained that fully. Kind of a lot to cover all told in this video, so for this round I'm going to call it a day. There is a lot happening. As of this video, there's 2.5 weeks to go, and the car looks like, well, this. And all the body out there. And it may seem like there's a lot to do, but the wiring was the biggest sort of headache to get done. It's still not quite finished. I still need to do some configuration with the ECU, but once that's all finished, the harness will come out, we'll wrap everything up, reinstall it for the last time, and then, well, the big final assembly can begin. And that's getting the side pods on, the body, etc., etc. So stay tuned for all that. I may be rolling out videos faster. It just depends on how much time I have to edit them. But I guess you guys aren't really going to know if I made my deadline or not until well after the fact. So if you're curious, you can follow along on my Instagram at DriveDriverDriven. I tend to post updates more closer to real time there, as far as kind of the status, where I'm at, what I'm working on, and a lot of information there will precede the videos to come later. With that, I'm going to call it a day, and I'll see you guys next time.